and welcome to another episode of Miracle of Daily Living. I'm Reverend Terry Keenan, your host, and I'd like you to stay with us this evening. We have a topic that some of you might think is a little premature, but let me assure you that the information you're going to receive this evening is vitally, or this afternoon, depending on which broadcast of this show you're seeing, will be vitally important to you and to your family later. Our guest this evening is Reverend Lynne Hulsebos, who is the pastoral care minister for the Santa Anita Church and a dear friend of mine. And Lynne, welcome. Hello. How are you?
I'm good, and thank you.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Now, we're going to talk this evening about end-of-life decisions, really, aren't we?
Yes.
Something I think we need to talk about right at the beginning. For many years, doctors were the absolute authority when it came to life and death. Whatever they said went, and that's the way things were handled. Is it still that way?
I think it's getting better. I'm sure there's still a lot of folks that think that doctors make the decisions, but we're learning now that we do have some power to work along with the doctor. I think maybe medical schools are getting better, and so doctors realize that patients and physicians work together. It's true, doctors or physicians are the experts in diagnosing and the treatment, but we're the experts in knowing what we would want as far as the treatment goes, what we want for our bodies.
And now the institutions pay attention to what we want. Is that correct?
Much better, yes, they do.
Yeah. How is that? Explain that to me a little bit.
Well, I think that we as patients have realized that we can have some power and we can assert ourselves. Also, I think that with all the new medical interventions that have come along in the past maybe 10, 15 years, it's moving so fast that we as patients or consumers or whatever you would say, we're learning that we need to kind of get on board and know what we would want or not want in end of life choices or everything, and that we can be a little assertive with our doctors.
Yeah, for a number of years anyway, it seemed like the basic philosophy of the medical community and the average American was life at any cost. If you're just going to be in the bed for 30 years with tubes running in and out of you, that's life, and we have to leave you that way. This changes that attitude, that paradigm, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I think there may be still some folks that think that that's the way it has to be, but now we know that we can choose what is quality of life for us. Is quality of life meaning being on a breathing machine or having a feeding tube or maybe dialysis? If we had to have those things, would that be quality of life? Maybe for some folks it would, and others it wouldn't. And some people want everything done, and other folks don't. But now we have a choice.
Now, how do we exercise that choice?
Well, that's the part. We need, it used to be when you did a will or a trust, there would be a power of attorney for health care, or maybe a living will. Well, some of those are very generic compared to what we have now. So now we call it an advance health care directive. And that's a document that you can say what kind of medical care you would want or not want, and you give the power to one person that would speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. And it's only when you can't speak for yourself.
So as long as you are able to, let's say, rationally and consciously make decisions, your advanced healthcare directive is just kind of standing there waiting for if it's needed.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, and you don't want to wait till an emergency comes, because then nobody maybe really knows what you'd want or not want. Your family is in a situation where they can't think right.
Sure.
So it's so important that you do the advanced health directive before emergency comes.
Well, now you say before an emergency comes. Do you think it's important for let's say, young adults, college-age students to fill out an advanced health care directive?
I think so, because an accident could happen to any of us. And if you're over 18 and you are an adult, people need to know what your wishes are. Maybe you're still at home with your parents, but you needed to at least talk it over with your, if you're that young of adult. But I still think advanced care directives are for everybody.
So you think we should have them from those early years right through to the ultimate end of life?
It seems like nowadays, with the things that they can do to keep us alive, would we? Yes, I think so. And like we say, it only comes into play if you can't speak for yourself. And you choose somebody to be, it's called an agent, and that person, it needs to be somebody that you know really well, that will speak up for you, that can do your wishes.
Yeah, well, you're literally putting your life in their hands.
Yes, you are.
I'm concerned about the word agent, because I'm thinking, do they get 15% or? But I know they don't really get paid. They're there to act as your representative.
As your representative.
And they do the best they can to make sure your wishes are followed.
Yes.
Now, do they have a copy of this advanced healthcare directive?
Yes. Yes. Whoever you choose, and there's also a place to have 3 different people if you want. The main person that you would want to speak for you, and maybe an alternate in case that person isn't available, or for whatever reason they just can't do it. You can also say who you would not want to have anything to do with your medical decisions.
Who are people you might not want to have that power, that authority?
I don't know. That might be somebody that you would think wouldn't act on your wishes, couldn't follow through or something. That's why it's usually a spouse, but sometimes the spouse isn't the right person because maybe they're not wouldn't be able to really follow through with your wishes.
Yeah, well, the spouse is going to have so many emotions going, it's going to be very difficult for them to say yes or no if it's a decision that might take you from them.
Yes, yes. And the person that is the agent or the advocates for you, it's always good for them to talk over with the family or with people. And one thing, it's not too good of an idea, like if you're a parent and you say, well, I'd like my son, but I don't want to leave my daughter out or something, and then you have a that's not so good, because in a situation where they might need to act fast, if they didn't agree, that just holds everything up. It can cause a lot of problems in the family. So it's better most of the time, I know every family is different, but to just have one person that will speak and say your wishes.
That's good to know. Now, what would happen if you get into a situation where you are approaching an end-of-life situation, but you do not have a healthcare directive? Does this go back as it was 50 years ago, and you're just going to do what they tell you you're going to do?
No, if you still have capacity, if you are in a terminal illness, is that what you're thinking of? And you know that you are...
What do you mean capacity?
Well, capacity means that you can understand what the doctor tells you. You can understand your condition that he or she's telling you about, the treatment that he or she is telling you about, that you understand all of that, and that you understand the consequences of your decision. If you choose not to have something, those consequences. If you choose to have something, to know the... And one thing that we didn't say is in 2009, Governor Schwarzenegger signed a bill that mandates doctors that now they need to tell the patient the medical condition and all the options. to aggressive care, to palliative care, to hospice care. So the patient knows all their options.
Well, what is palliative care?
Palliative care is maybe comfort care. It's care of the whole person, body, mind, spirit, and it's to know that dying is just a part of life, but that it's very personal to you or to me. It's very personal.
Sure.
And so palliative care helps you along the way. Maybe you've got a diagnosis, but it's terminal, but it's going to be a long time. But you begin to think about, and so palliative care folks, they help you with emotional things, with resources in the community. They're like a backup. And then it's maybe easier to transition into hospice care when the time. People say, I guess it's learned now that people wait way too long for hospice care. So now palliative care is coming. And there are doctors that specialize in that or beginning to. So it's going to be a real wonderful comfort for folks.
This is really wonderful because there is, I suppose, naturally such a fear and a negativity attached to death.
Yes.
And I'm sure that our attitudes affect the patient who is undergoing this process. And if we have the ability to provide them with comfort, with peace, this would help them make that transition more peacefully. This, I think, is one of the main purposes of hospice care, is it not?
Yes, that the patient is cared for, that their pain is under control, any agitation or anything that the medications can give to keep the person comfortable, safe, clean, and the family, they feel so relieved that somebody's there.
Yeah.
They're not hung out to dry.
And somebody semi-professional is there that
Yes.
knows what to do and has had training in that line.
And the hospice is a team. There's a social worker, like probably a head nurse, the doctor, a chaplain. So you're covered, and they're not there until you really want them or need them. Plus they provide the equipment, the medical equipment that you need, and what do I want to say? Bandages, all of the medical things that you would need when you're caring for somebody.
Now, I know from a conversation we had quite a while ago that initially when the hospice care came up, it was sort of a thing of the medical doctor handling the decision making up to a certain point and then receding and hospice care coming out and taking the rest of it. But from what you told me, now in many places, the hospice care and the medical doctors are working together so that as the one recedes and the other comes forward, there's no break in service or change of intimacy with people, that they're just growing together. Is that correct?
Sort of. The palliative care, you can still keep your doctor and everything. When you transition to hospice, then you're saying, I don't want any more, I'm not going to have an operation, I'm not going to have a blood transfusion.
No medical intervention,
Yeah,
as they say.
yeah. Mm-hmm. But hospice will still, and then you go to the hospice physician, and they meet once a week, and so that physician keeps up with your case, and then that physician will visit, or physicians do visit you. But yeah, your doctor pretty much is out of the picture when you transition into hospice care.
Mm-hmm. So it's still rather a break, but it's a more gentle break than it has been in the past.
Yeah.
I know this is I suppose your main love in the ministry of dealing with people during this transitional period and calling on the ill. If you go into a situation and a person says, well, I have an advanced health care directive, how do you know that they have it? Is there some place well, first, is it a legal document?
It's a legal document. It's legal in 37 states. California, it is a legal document. You do need to sign it and date it, and you need to have 2 witnesses. It doesn't have to be notarized. It can either be notarized or have 2 witnesses, and the witnesses need to be 18 or over, and they can't be a blood relative or by marriage or adoption, can't be your doctor, can't be your financial advisor, anybody that could profit, or they just, but anybody, so two witnesses. And then, yes, it is a legal document.
So it would stand up in a court of law?
Yes, it does.
And if somebody was to do what was not requested on that document, they could be sued therefor?
You mean if the person that was speaking for you didn't follow through?
Or if the medical authority said, no, we're not going to do that, we're going to do something else?
I think if the medical authorities, for whatever reason, yeah. There are bioethical committees also. So I'm thinking that maybe if something like that came along, if the medical person did not want to do what the advance health directive said, then they would probably have the bioethical committee meet to try to
work it out. Now suppose a person does have that directive and you go in to call them and they say, well, I have an advanced health care directive. Where would that be kept? Is that something that a person carries with them all the time?
If you know that if it's in an emergency, that's not so good. But they're like we like 5 wishes, and there is on here a card that you carry in your wallet that tells that you have an advanced healthcare directive and who your agent is with their information.
Oh, that's excellent.
So, so you would want your agent, whether you have 1, 2, or 3 of them, your doctor, your any family member, anybody that you would want, and you keep the original, but not in a lockbox in the bank or something,
down in the basement.
Yeah, where it can be gotten. Yeah. If you know that it's imminent, that you're going to die, and you have one, you probably really don't need it anymore because maybe you already know that you're not going to, maybe you're already on hospice. When you're on hospice, it's really, because you already have said, I'm not. But there are a lot of times when it's an accident. You can't say anymore, I don't want any heroics, or I'm not having any breathing machine. You can't say that anymore because sometimes it's the right thing to do. Definitely. Breathing machines, feeding tubes, it's wonderful. It can, but maybe when you're already compromised, and it wouldn't do anything but just cause you harm, that's where the advanced healthcare directive is really important.
Now, you just had an experience with someone who finally passed away yesterday, and I know several times you were terribly, terribly frustrated because they did not have an advanced health care directive. Can you tell us something about that? Yes.
This was a gentleman in really good health. He was 80 years old, but he was in really good health. He had never done anything, hadn't talked to anybody, nothing. And he was in Starbucks and he just collapsed. And they found that he had a real serious heart condition and they did surgery. And during the surgery, he had a stroke.
Oh, dear.
So he was on the breathing machine. But there was nobody to speak for him. Nobody knew what he wanted. And his wife has dementia. So normally, the doctors or whatever would go to the spouse. She could not speak for him because she didn't have the capacity anymore. She had 2 daughters. Well, he was like that for a while until they could determine that he couldn't write, he couldn't speak, he was on the breathing machine, but they determined that he could give the power to his wife's daughter's husband. Okay, so the husband has the power now, but he never had he couldn't speak for that man because he really didn't know. Even though it was determined after about 2 months that he probably would never be off the breathing machine, he had to have the feeding tube. And he was that way for 10 months until he died because of complications. His kidneys failed, and they did finally decide, no, we won't do dialysis. And he died. But that was 10 months.
10 months of lying there, being unable to really enjoy life, just being something in a bed.
And finally, he didn't even open his eyes anymore. It's like, but nobody, and the doctors would have been maybe willing to give him the straight story, but the son-in-law just felt that that was out of his realm of what he could do, even to let the doctors speak to him.
Now, what would have happened if he had the healthcare directive? That would have been different.
If he had had the healthcare directive and it had been his wife, and she would not have been able to, then it would have moved to the next person. Hopefully, if he had done the healthcare directive, he would have realized early on that if he had his wife, that he needed to change that. And all you need to do is put in the new person and initial it. And that person would have known that he would have said, in the 5 wishes it says, if my doctor and another doctor feel that a breathing machine or whatever, it gives you the choices there, would only prolong my life, but it will not help me. If it started, I want it stopped. If it hasn't started, I don't want it started, or I want it. I want everything done. Those are the 3 choices, and in the 5 wishes, it goes through all the different scenarios. Did I say what the 5 wishes are already?
Well, we're going to get into that
Okay.
next. We're going to jump over there to the 5 wishes. By having this, does your agent need to have a power of attorney?
No, that is
That's interesting.
That is a power of attorney for health.
The 5 wishes. Is,
When you do a will or a trust now, you don't have to have that power of attorney that the lawyer will give you, because mostly sometimes they're generic. Sometimes they have 5 wishes, or they might have the American Medical Association, which is a good advanced healthcare directive. And then you put it with that, but you also make sure that your doctor, and you want extra copies, because nowadays when you go to the hospital, they always ask, do you have an advanced healthcare directive?
And the five wishes that we're going to talk about next is a wonderful way to get that information, right?
Yes. Well, we think so because it gives you a place to not only check the boxes, but write what it means to you. Like, you might want to be kept alive for some things, but like if you were burned really bad, would you want antibiotics? Would you want dialysis? Or would you just, if it was, things like that.
Yeah. Where can a person get the 5 wishes?
Well, they're in a lot of doctors' offices now.
Wonderful.
And then it tells where you can get them, and anybody could call our church, and I would be happy to give them the address and the phone numbers, or maybe we can say it now.
Sure.
It's called Aging with Dignity.
Aging with Dignity.
And if you want to order, they're $5, and the number is 1-888-594-7437. It's actually 1-888-5-WISHES.
Very good. And if you want that and you didn't get the number, you don't have a pencil with you, if you call the Santa Anita Church at area code 626-446-8206, we can get the message to Reverend Lynne, and she can call you back or tell you what to do so that you can get your copy of the 5 wishes. And then the important thing is to fill it out. Having the thing in your bookcase is not going to do you a lot of good, is it?
No.
Do you think that this is about the best vehicle we have right now for going forward? For building our own responsibility?
Yeah, that's the word, responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it really is. But you have to talk it over with the agent, your advocate, and your family. You still have to have that conversation, because then they hopefully know he really meant that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's everybody has a different idea of what quality of life would mean to them.
Yeah. Who should have copies of this?
The agent,
Okay.
all your family, anybody that you want to have it, your doctor, and usually when you give them to the hospital, if you go again, they don't have it anyway, so it's good to take it every time you go.
Yeah. They don't put it in your medical record for later.
Well, they say, but it doesn't seem like that. No, but your doctor will keep it in your file. And then you just take it with you and you have it.
Boy, oh boy.
And they seem to be asking for it even when it's a minor thing now. In fact, some of the hospitals have a note at the registration, did you bring your advanced health care directive?
That's excellent.
And if you don't, they'll give you one, but it's one of those ones that don't really say your wishes.
So this 5 wishes is the one that you would recommend with all of your experience.
Yes.
And you have considerable experience in this field. You have attended, I know, many, many classes in helping people through this period and knowing what to do and being able to ease their transition as well as the comfort of their families.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to call you Lynne instead of Reverend Hulsebos or Reverend Lynne, because you're just too dear to call you by any fancy title. And I want to thank you for being with us here on Miracle of Daily Living and ask you, is there anything in our last closing moments that you think you should talk about that we haven't covered?
I think we've covered everything pretty much, and I just appreciate to be here because I do think it's so important. We've heard about so many tragic things,
Oh, yes.
and nobody knew what to do. And then the family is so torn apart.
Yeah.
So, and I'm happy to talk to anybody anytime about 5 wishes.
Well, Lynne, thank you very much for being here with us. Again, let me tell you the number that you could call for more information is the Santa Anita Church, Arcadia, California, 626-446-8206. The person that will answer the phone there, or if no one's there, the answering machine will be there. You tell them what you would like and leave your phone number clearly and distinctly. And I have to say that because some people leave phone numbers and you can't tell what they are. So speak nice and clearly, and if we don't call you back in a couple of days, call again because we couldn't get your phone number correct. Very important information, a very wonderful expert guest who lives her life to help others through this time. Thank you again, Lynne. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure being with you. I'd like to see you again real soon. Goodbye.